Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today in this episode, we had special guest Kristian Morgan on to tell his story of setting the new fastest known time going southbound. Kristian obviously is a wealth of knowledge. He has a very interesting and dynamic backstory into getting into this FKT attempt, and it was a lot of fun to roll this interview. But a few things about Kristian. He's a runner who, after three failed attempts to set the record, just last month set the fastest known time record for the southbound route of the Appalachian Trail at 45 days, 4 hours, and 27 minutes, which also places him second on the Appalachian Trail for the overall. In addition, Kristian held the record in 2020 for the 630-mile Southwest Coast Path in the UK, which we found out in the podcast that he did that as kind of a consolidation for not being able to travel during that time to come and attempt yet again an attempt at the Appalachian Trail fastest known time. And as an ultra runner and coach, Kristian trains and works remotely all over the world, and we're excited to talk about him in the show. Kristian really is a very authentic guy. We really appreciate him coming on. He had some personal things going on this week that he still made time for the show, and really just wanted to say thank you. But I think you guys will get a lot of value out of this. It's always interesting to peel back the curtains a little bit and learn more about what actually happens out there on the trail, what the mindset is, and what brought him up to the trail to begin with. I always find that there's amazing takeaways from talk interviews and talks like this. So I'm sure there will be things, whether you're a runner or whether you're a hiker, that you can take and apply and learn from to make you either better at those, or to honestly just encourage you to get out there and explore more, disconnect from this crazy world that we live in, and reconnect with yourself. So that's the goal. So we'll go ahead and roll this interview with Kristian Morgan. Well, Kristian, I'm super excited to have you on the show, and I'm super grateful that you made time this week to come onto the show. I know it's been a tougher week on you, and you wanted to actually dedicate this show to your father. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a second to do that before we jump right in.
Sure, thanks, Tayson. My father is he just passed away yesterday, and he was much loved by all of us. And one of the things that he said to me, it was a 3-year battle against cancer, and one of the things he said to me was, "Kristian, you're living the life that I wanted to live. So keep on pushing limits and keep on doing what you're doing." So my father's a big inspiration for me to not necessarily look at how he lives and what he does, but rather what I do, was what he wanted to do. So yeah, shout out to Roger Morgan, 73 years old and 20 days yesterday.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to even start this conversation, is maybe just talking about your background and, did your parents have an effect on you getting into the outdoors and into running, or just, how did you grow up in general?
I guess I grew up in Australia, even though I have a British passport. My father has a sister who lives over in Australia, and they raised their family there. And so we went over there from a young age. I think I was about 4 or 5. And so, yeah, it was nice to be involved in going to the beach and, swimming in the ocean, going to barbecues, a lot of outside living in comparison to, say, the United Kingdom. There's a big outside culture. So, yeah, my parents are responsible for that. And then I guess I kind of got into running through boxing in the late 90s. Yeah.
So you were training for boxing, and a part of that was training cardio?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we have to run. And it was the running which eventually led to me actually seeing an advertisement in the paper, the local paper, about a marathon. And I thought, hey, that sounds fun. I reckon I could do that. So I signed up, ran the marathon, and it changed my life. I found out a lot about myself in the ring and my personal limitations, because obviously a lot of things are mental. And if you're scared and you're in the ring, you're not relaxed, you're going to choke, I guess, or whatever, or be choked, if it was. But no, I think with the running, it was me alone with my mind and my body. And I really appreciated that. So yeah, took priority of the boxing. I let the boxing go and started running a few marathons each year, mostly road marathons, and that started in 2000, so quite some time ago.
So about how old were you at that point?
As so 23 years old. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So
exactly
came
half.
in
Yeah.
So you came into running at 23, you didn't grow up running, you didn't like run track or anything like that.
No, I mean, my first marathon was really slow. It was, let's get this done. I didn't understand what a good time was or a bad time. It was me really more about, I don't really have a training program. I've been doing boxing. I think I'm pretty fit. I think I can do this. And I believe it was around 4 hours, 45 minutes. But what I felt really proud about was is that I never walked, I never, it was slow running, but I never walked. And so for me, that was a real win. And
Yeah.
yeah, no track background for me.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that as a kid growing up. We'd only have to run like 1 mile in our gym class, and if I could like run the whole mile without stopping, I counted that as a win. I was a bigger kid, right? Like I played football and threw and stuff like that in track. I was never a runner, so I can definitely relate to that. But so you get into running, you start running marathons, and eventually you transition into trail running. And I believe I heard somewhere that you've finished 100 ultras at this point.
Yeah, actually, it's a combination of like ultras and marathons, and it's about 150 or something
Wow,
like that. Yeah, since
that's
I kind of stopped counting after 100, and then yeah, it's around 150 something. Yeah.
so. Are you just? I mean, how many is that a year typically? Like, what does your typical year look like in terms of maybe when you're not doing the FKT attempts that take 45 plus days, right? What's your typical year look like as far as your race schedule?
I guess it was a bit like cryptocurrency. It started off like this and then just had a sharp curve. And then I reached my goal of hitting the 100 marathon, and oh well, it's just called the 100 Marathon Club. And then there's a kind of a drop off. So up to 2015, I think I'd run about 50 marathons. So not that many each year. Progressively got more and more and became trail running. Ran my first ultra marathon in 2009. So that was a big step for me to go further in distance, not just
Hmm.
with time, but distance. And so after that, I saw these old guys with a 100 marathon t-shirt on, because I'd sometimes do the same marathon more than once. And I said to myself, hey, Kristian, one day I'm going to join that club, but I don't want to be like in my 60s or 70s. I want to do it over the next 2 years. So from 2015 and 16, I ran about 50 marathons, ultras, and 100 miler combined. Um, and so it was a combination of 100 milers, ultra marathon. I consider those two different things: 100 milers, ultra marathons, and marathons. And I hit. It was pretty sweet. In 2016, I ran my first marathon, which was the Wolverhampton Marathon. So it was my first one. I won it that day. I got a personal best, and it was my 100th marathon. So, and my dad
Wow.
was at the finish line, so it couldn't really be more perfect than that.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, you're essentially running, 2+ marathons a month at that point. About every 2 weeks, you'd be back in there running again. It's incredible. I mean, out of curiosity, what do you feel like you took away from that, or what did you learn about yourself or your body through, those couple of years of really hitting so many marathons back to back?
Well, I definitely didn't feel the need to have a high volume in the week for
Yeah.
my training, because sometimes I'd do, it wasn't evenly spaced out. I'd often run a marathon on Saturday and an ultra on Sunday, and I was top tenning a lot of this stuff. And so the more I ran, I feel the better, more experienced and faster I got, and kind of felt that I didn't need, like I said, to keep that volume. I remember me and my friend went to this something called the Cheddar Gorge. Like cheddar cheese is originally from a place in England called Cheddar Gorge, and they have this
Hmm.
marathon there. Me and my friend David Ross, he's an amazing runner. Went there, and he said, "Oh, I've got to go and do an 8 mile run because I want to make my trip. I want to get 100 miles this week." And I said, yeah, I'm happy with just a marathon tomorrow. You go ahead and do that. But I won the marathon that day. You know, I was winning quite a lot of these as well as top tenning and podium. So I guess I didn't feel it. I think the what I learned was the racing became the training.
Hmm.
Yeah, for the next one. So
So I had an experience recently where I was out pacing someone on the Moab 240, and I ended up going 60 miles with them, and I felt better than I thought I should have because I had basically taken 2 months off of training completely. And I kind of got thinking about it where I was like, man, wonder if even like a 7 or a 10 day taper that most people do before big events like that was enough for me. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on that. If you're really just going race to race with minimal training, um, do you have any thoughts on just like the taper itself, or if you can have a much longer taper per se, and have that still, put you on the top spot on a podium?
yeah, it is an interesting question. I did live in Ethiopia in 2014 with the intention to, I haven't released it yet. It's part of my notes. I'm compiling all these notes throughout my life one day to write a book. And one time I spent 6 months in Ethiopia with the runners to pretty much have an insight into what they did to be, running the times that they ran. And I think it's pretty. It depends how deep the competition is. I mean, if you're in a trail run and you run a trail run on Saturday, and now you're running one on Sunday, and you're winning it in 240 something, like I was maybe. Um, yeah, but if you're like top level competition, you've got Paris Marathon or Berlin, then yeah, I think there's a spectrum, and I think the guys who want to get the fastest time and the most out of themselves, I think are better hitting a block, which obviously compounds over the years in their experience, and having the appropriate taper and the recovery and the motivation to train again. So I think the Ethiopians, until we start beating the East Africans, then we'll be learning from those guys. But as for me, a trail runner, I'm just like a humble, like I say, trail runner. I'm nowhere nothing like these guys, and but it's fun. I mean, the main thing for me it was fun. I had it. I also, you asked the question, what did I learn? I had a goal, and it was a 2 year goal, and it was nice to have such a long term goal. And when I achieved that, I felt such a sense of persistence, and that made me realize that I could set myself a goal, which was maybe 2 years in the future, and stay with it, and it would be achieved.
Yeah.
So persistent and having fun, but yeah, I mean, if you want to run fast marathons, don't run one on Saturday and then Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of power in setting those big long-term goals, right? They're just so fulfilling when you do achieve them, and they have the power to like greatly adapt your whole body, right? Your whole physiology per se. Like running year over year has been something that I've recently been able to experience, I'd say, because I didn't start running until 2020.
Yeah.
And it's been very interesting to just watch year over year the changes and what's possible, what's not possible for me, and how I would say in a lot of ways things are just easier in general now. I can train less and do just as much, if not more, but I'm also training kind of year round at some level. So there's a lot of power, I think, in being able to set bigger, longer term goals, and then obviously achieve them is that much more gratifying, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Early on,
okay.
it was the goal of, okay, this year I want to run a marathon. Now I'm going to run that. But to have the foresight to say, actually, in 2 years, I want to join the 100 Marathon Club. So, and you're right, the body adapts. I was in Ethiopia. We were doing hill sprints. I was the last one up every time, but I made it up before the guys came back down to repeat number two. I think we did 40 repeats with a 5 minute break after 20. And it was humbling. It was tough. Felt sick, but I stuck with it. And one of the runners came over to me afterwards and congratulated me and said, if you stick with this and live in Ethiopia, you'll adapt.
Mhm.
So yeah, we do. We adapt.
Yeah, I promise we're going to get to the FKT attempt, but I was hoping you'd bring up the Ethiopia thing because I found that so interesting when I was doing a little bit of research here. Um, how did you even get in with these guys to be able to go over there and spend time and run? Was that difficult? And you said you were there for 6 months, so yeah, I guess I'd love to just hear any insights on that whole experience.
It was easy. I think it just takes an outgoing, friendly person. I was in Sicily. I'd run the Palermo Marathon, uh, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. And I noticed these just amazing looking East African runners looking so slender and elegant, jogging around with each other in groups of six at 14-minute mile pace to just warm up. And there was such a calmness. I was intrigued, in other words. I was intrigued by they obviously look so different from us, not physically, but there's something up here which is really different to us Europeans running around, sprinting at the start and stuff. And so the next year I came up with the idea, I'm actually going to go over to one of these guys. I'm going to introduce myself and I'm going to make friends and I'm going to tell them I want to write a book called Running with the Ethiopians and I'm going to see what happens, swap emails. So the guy I went over to was called Sergey Bukele. He's not the Bukele, another Bukele. So Sergey Bukele, he now lives in Canada. He was a 212, he ran 211 or 212, something that day, which isn't super fast, but he won the marathon. I said, hey, good luck. I saw him at the end. I was really cheeky as we were going past where all the East African marathon runners are having their massage. I just walked in there. I'm going in, I'm not loud, but rules are made to be broken. I went in there, congratulated Sergey, and it looked good on me that he knew who I was because I spoke to him before. I told him what I just told you. When I come to Ethiopia, write a book. Here's my email. So he sent me an email and I ended up going over and doing what I dreamed to do. I went there 3 times altogether, and the longest I stayed was 6 months. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
So, so you spent more than 6 months there. So when you're there, you're just how much like are you training every day? Is it harder training than you expected, or was it just more strategic training per se?
Well, I could never keep the pace with them. I mean, like I said, I'm a 240 something marathon runner. I'm not a two. I mean, when you start running under 215 or 214, there's some interest, but anyone 220 or something, I mean, everyone runs 220. These are the slow guys. So when they asked me what my pace was, or what my fastest marathon time was, they just looked really confused as to how I could call myself a runner, you know. And I understood that. I had empathy for their confusement, so kind of funny. But we all made friends.
That's
And
insane.
yeah,
That's
sorry.
that's just so fast. Like that is so fast to me. That's running 240 would require so much change and I don't even know if it'd be possible for me genetically. I don't know. Like I just can't even imagine running 240, let alone 220 and under. It's just insanity. But I guess I haven't been around marathoners to ever hear them talk like that. Because to me, it's sub 3 hours is incredible, just incredible.
I mean, yeah, sub three is also incredible. And then next level for these 2-0 whatever guys. Yeah.
So you couldn't keep pace with them per se. But did you take some of the training that they did and bring that home and apply it to the rest of your, I don't
Sorry,
know,
yeah,
your career?
there was more questions. So we ran twice a day, every day. We ran just before sunrise in the morning. We just drink maybe 3 or 4 cups of water, no coffee, no nothing. Sometimes we'd have a white piece of bread and half a banana each or something. Not very appetizing. And then we go running for whatever it was that day. They had different runs. Obviously, they had their long run, they had their hill intervals, they had their track sessions. There was usually about 3 speed sessions a week, and then one long run. So 4 key sessions a week. Didn't do doubles. Often would run beyond marathon distance. So would run 50K on their long run and typically ran marathon distance every week, but a little bit slower than their pace, maybe 10K in that. Maybe they'd have a 10K at sub-marathon pace and then, oh yeah, the evening runs. So yeah, every day in the evening, depending, it's a Christian Orthodox country, very religious. I think 94% is Christian Orthodox or 96. And so a lot of the runners had Sundays off. Some of the more focused and apologetic runners just ran Sundays as well and did 14 runs each week, but most of them ran 12 runs a week. And then the evening run was called a social run. And I mean, we're talking like 12-minute miles, just that
Hmm.
really slow shuffling to just, I guess, adapt to what you'd done that morning.
Yeah.
There's a
Well, that's
lot of,
kind of like that 80-20 principle, right? Of like running below aerobic threshold and trying to log like 80% of your miles there. So that's interesting. Obviously, they're logging, I'm sure, a lot more at these faster rates and whatnot, but they're still getting in that low aerobic exercise as well.
yeah. And they have a hunger. So when they're all the runners, when I came back from Ethiopia, I found it culturally shocking to come back to London and see people running down the street who weren't like, I don't know, 5'8". They're like with the power to weight body ratio, super skinny. Like I just, to see a general person running down the street, who's never going to run under 4 hours, it just felt really culturally weird because the only people who run in Ethiopia are professional athletes. You don't
Hmm.
run over there. So they have this
Right.
hunger. And I remember one time this woman overtaking me on a long run we did. I think I did 50K that day with like no water, no marathon with no water. And she ran past me and I could just hear her breathing. She was on the threshold of what was I considered humanly possible. And I think you have to be hungry to put yourself through that weekly, monthly, and yearly, and hunger to change your life and your community's life, your family's life, the friends, the people in the village. So it goes a lot deeper than just wanting to have a personal goal. That hunger is deep
Yeah.
for
Well,
yes.
the run to do 14 runs a week obviously is going to take a toll on its body with how you recover, right? But I think it'd be better time spent to hear how you recovered on your FKT because obviously you're going to take all of this and you're going to be applying it into your ultras and your FKT attempts, right? So you mentioned before we hit record here, you were on a 5-year journey, and hopefully, I guess we're now at the book end of this because you've set and achieved the fastest known time on the southbound Appalachian Trail
Mhm.
supported, which is absolutely incredible. Completed it in I think 45 days and 4 hours. I actually was looking at this. You beat the previous time by 18 hours, which seems like a lot, 18 hours, but in the grand scheme of things, over 45 days, you beat him by about 1.5%. Like you're 1.5% faster over the course of 45 days. It's wild to think that the length of this trail, right? It basically 2,200 miles. It's absolutely incredible. And then I looked up this as well because I've always found it fascinating, right? I'm from the West out here in the United States where we have quote unquote real mountains. We have high elevation and we have this. So it always shocked me a few years back when I learned that the Appalachian Trail had more elevation gain and descend than the PCT or the CDT. And so it says that, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate or not, but it said there's 465,000 feet of vertical gain in this, which is about 212 feet per mile. Um, that's huge, right? When you look at like I run a marathon here, it's at altitude, it's crappy trails, but it's to me it's so steep and it's like 280 feet per mile. And then like the Hard Rock 100, right? That's like 330 feet of elevation gain and descent per mile. So 212 for 2,200 miles is insanity. There's so much constant climbing, and I think there's in some ways like I guess I haven't done the whole Appalachian Trail. I've only done little sections. But the trail was pretty good and it was pretty like graded per se. It's just constant like climbing and you're not at altitude, so you can usually keep your breath, but that doesn't take away from 465,000 vertical feet of climbing. Just absolutely crazy. So, I guess take me back to 5 years ago, or whenever this did start for you of why in the world did you want to attempt this trail? You've been running marathons and now you're going to jump to a 2,200 mile long trail. So talk me through the why, where that became, your obsession, your dream, and yeah, why did you want to go do this, Christian?
Actually, when I was wrapping up that goal in 2016 of the 100 marathons, one of the ones I did was a multi-stage called Marathon des Sables. and it's in the Sahara Desert. It's kind of like a marathon a day, then a double marathon day, and yeah, I think you do 5 marathons or something like that.
Is that the one where you like they go ahead, they set up like a tent and you like run into the camp and you sleep in the tent and then you kind of get up and do the next thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a circuit. They move um the whole camp to the end of the day two, and on day two they move the entire camp to the end of day three and three and so on. So
Yeah.
that, and I met Carol Sabe during that ultra marathon multi-stage, and he told me about the PCT he was going to do in 16. So he went and did it and set a new record, broke String Bean's record. Um, and when I saw his article on Strava, I just sent him an email or something or a message saying, "Congratulations, Carol. It's really cool. You did what you said you were going to do." Actually, he didn't tell me he was going to go for the record. He said he was just going to do the trail. I think probably not putting pressure on himself.
Mm.
And he said, "Yeah, thanks." And then he got in contact and he said, "Hey, would you like to be, I think it was 2017, would you like to be part of my crew for me going against Scott Jurek's northbound supported Appalachian Trail record?" And I think at the time, String Bean had the record, self-supported. But yeah, so that was the overall fastest. So meeting Carol in the desert, um, going in 2018, I spent 15 days with him, and I ran to begin with a few 18, I think 20-mile days, but eventually it just went to about 35 miles a day running with him. And then I went and did UTMB about a couple of weeks after that, left him in on the Appalachian Trail, and I came away with this taste of what it was like to go for a fastest known time. And I had an intimate insight because I was on the trail more than anyone else who ran with him. I was with Carol more than any of his crew. And I just got to really see it from the inside. And I saw the crewing and I saw the hikers, the through hikers. So that inspired me. And I contacted him at the end of 18 after he got the record and said, "Hey, Carol, I really want to go for this myself. So I'm just letting you know." And then I had a couple of failed attempts. In 19, I like to call them stepping stones towards success. 19, I got as far as Hot Springs. 2020, I couldn't come to America, so I broke Damian Hall's record in the Britain for the Britain's longest national trail. I thought that would be a good training run, 630 miles, and I did it in 10 days and 6 hours, or no, 10 days and 12 hours or something. So like 61 miles a day. And then 21, I had a second failed attempt, which ended the same place at Hot Springs. And
So
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 by
I don't want you to skirt over those. How far
oh,
into the trail is that and what was breaking down?
my mind, I guess. I just wasn't ready for it. So 2019, actually, let's be fair, my crew fell apart in 2019. I had my young cousin out there. She had no experience, no driving license, and it just didn't work. She didn't gel with gun section, who's my mom as well, who was out there for every single attempt. And it just didn't work. There's a lot of tension in the crew, and I called it and I said, "Okay, Megan, my cousin, we're going to fly you home tomorrow. I know you don't want to be here." So it was crew problems in 19. Like I say, 20, I set the record on Britain's longest national trail. And then 21, I actually got myself a travel exemption, or an exemption to travel from the USA Olympic Committee. And I came to America and I got to, yeah, so in 19, I got about 300 miles or something, 50 miles a day, roughly. I don't know, 290 miles, Hot Springs. And then same in 21, I did about the same distance, got to about the same place. But it wasn't my crew that let me down in 21. I had a great crew, Iceman and gun section, 2 vehicles, 2 drivers. My
Wow.
niece was there, Mia as well. But I had like a bit of tendonitis on my inside left groin. And instead of going through it, I just let it stop me. So you can call it physical, but believe me, when you're doing such a long trail, you have to go through physical problems and sometimes they just disappear. So yeah, so those 2 failed attempts, which I call stepping stones towards success, gave me the hunger to get past Hot Springs. Yeah.
And that was about 300-ish miles into the trail.
About
Okay.
300 miles, roughly 50 miles a day or so.
And how many total attempts have you done on this trail?
So was it like 19, 21, 22, and 23? I've done 4 attempts,
All right, so tell
but
me about 22.
last year I set the second fastest time going northbound. I was 5.9% slower than Carol Sabe, which equates to about 2.9 miles a day less than he did, or maybe
Hmm.
someone do the math. Maybe it was something close to that. Um, yeah, I was going for the record. I got to day 31, very close to the finish, like well over 2/3 in. And I had a lead of 27 miles on Carol, which is pretty good, almost by the halfway point. I was half a day ahead of him. Carl Meltzer was blowing me up on social media and saying Christian's half a day ahead, and that was cool. And then eventually I just started to lose a little bit of that lead. And instead of having the foresight that maybe Carol was going through a phase where he felt strong and I was going through a phase where I felt weak, I just got to day 31. I was 10 miles ahead of record pace and I just got off trail and I said, guys, I'm done. The
Okay.
pressure got to me. Carol really got inside. I allowed Carol to get inside my head. I think he was a better, stronger, faster athlete than me, and I couldn't do it. And I went to a hotel. I left the trail, got back on the trail the next day, lost a full day, and continued and set the second fastest time in the world, but in a more of a relaxed way. You know,
Mhm.
the fire had been put out a bit by then, but there was no nerves, so I didn't work well under pressure, which changed this year, I guess.
Yeah.
So
So you've had a lot of experience now on the trail. You've probably run I mean, a lot of it, right? You head out there on trail this year. What's the mindset?
Um, okay, so first of all, having a family member as a crew member is difficult. So gun section is my mum. And in 2019 and 21, I was getting triggered a bit like a child would do with their parent, a child, whatever, a grown up version of a child, whatever. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think last year I just said, okay, Christian, you need to really realize that there's no one else here for you. She's doing her best, and you need to take everything that she's giving you and use it. So last year and this year, I just went with, okay, it's not the crew, you know. I had great weather conditions last year, so if I get bad weather conditions, I can't blame it on anything. Was my excuse? Was my mindset this year? There's nothing that I can do. I'm gonna own this. If I fail, I'm gonna own that failure. I'm not gonna come on podcast and say, hey, I had a bad day out there. Well, if I did, it affected me, and so um yeah, just getting out there and just sucking it all up. I had 3 full starts. We all went and met up in Maine. All came back down because hikers were getting off trail. Records were being smashed with the flooding. Record numbers. I went back up again. I think 3 weeks later, got on trail. A through hiker was killed crossing a stream. I got my leg trapped in a boulder. Crossing a stream, and I just said, I told my crew I didn't have heart, which wasn't true because 3 weeks later I said, you know what, guys, I do have heart, but I had the wrong weather and we've got a window. Let's see what I can do. Or let's see what we can do. So went back with I had 5 points of gratitude. One, the gun section, my mum, for being out there and doing her best. Number two, Iceman for being the second crew and the people who were coming to meet me. My body for allowing me to use it in this way. The opportunity because in 2020 I couldn't even get to the trail. Like I was told, I'm not allowed to leave my country. And then five was the experience. To be grateful for the five things really just helped keep me focused on what I was doing. And yeah, I guess that was the difference between this year.
Bes-
And also this year I didn't break under pressure. I got off trail with an injury in Vermont because it was so muddy and I lost a day, whatever, almost a day. And then I got back on trail and just chased that southbound record.
that was this year. You got off trail for a year, or for a day. For a day.
Yeah. As
Wow.
well. Yeah. Yeah. Both
So
times.
so I just got to say this as I'm listening to this. It's bizarre to me to hear you, kind of have, I don't know. I don't want to call them excuses, but like you've kind of like you've touched on a few, but knowing that you've done 100 ultras and knowing that you're willing to do this would also indicate that you're like one of the most tough mental, physical guys in the world, right? Like you're doing ridiculously hard things. So it's like it was almost like there's this separation, right? Of like, I'm going to get off trail because of this. I'm going to get off trail because of this. But then at the same time, you're like crushing things in your life, and just it almost seems like like there wasn't a parallel going on with some of that. How much of that like gratitude mindset that you came into this year did you have before, or was that kind of a new thing for this year that helped you?
I mean, it came to me this year. It didn't come to me last year. I said I'm grateful, but these were five things. I was running one morning, had my headlamp on, and I just came out with, "Hey, I'm grateful for," and it just came out. Like I said it out loud on the trail. It was like my mom, Iceman, my body, the opportunity, and the experience. And yeah, it's almost, I think last year helped me with this year, and you know, the experience I gained from last year. Also having the confidence, because last year when I started out, I was a guy who stopped 300 miles along the trail. Yeah, I got the Southwest Coast Path record, but that's 630 miles. This year, I had the confidence to know that I'm the second fastest athlete in the world to complete the AT behind Carol. So I knew that all I had to do was run slower than myself. And also the other thing is I went south this year. So my A goal was to break the overall record, which is 41 days, 7 hours and 39 minutes. My B goal was to set a southbound record. And to set a southbound record, I could run, I think, a full day slower than I'd ran last year. So it's almost like going to a marathon, a bit like what Kipchoge said. His PB is 1 hour, 59 minutes and something. So when he went in with that mindset and all I've got to run is 2 something into the marathon. So I knew I could get that southbound record. And I did. I got pulled away from the overall record by the weather conditions, the results of the weather conditions. And I just stayed on track. I had that second goal, like getting the southbound record.
Yeah.
So
that confidence.
Yeah. Get me
confidence
hungry.
and gratitude. No, that's very interesting. I think that I've seen some other famous runners, famous athletes. I think the pressure does crack a lot of them. There's a lot of eyes watching them. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of pressure they put on themselves. And anyone that's performing at this level puts a lot of pressure on themselves, right? So that's really interesting. And I think that's amazing that you're able to kind of step to the side of that and run your own race versus, get trapped in those pressures, right? So yeah. You start off on the trail this year. I'm really interested to hear, because I've interviewed like Joshua Perry and Jeff Garmeyer, and I'm really interested to hear, because they're self-supported, right? Whereas you are supported. I'm interested to hear like what your sleep strategy is on an effort like this, right? When interviewing some of those self-supported guys, they don't run, but they also just don't sleep. It seems like they sleep so little. I want to say that like Josh Perry, I want to say it was about 4 hours a night is kind of what he was sleeping. So I'm curious what your like sleep strategy was in an effort like this.
Yeah, I think there's to find the threshold of your sleep is difficult. Like the idea is how little amount of sleep you can have so you can maximize the amount of time moving forwards on the trail each day. And I just felt psychologically, for me, that number was 7 hours. I thought 7 hours will give me enough time to rest, recover, and go again and hit 50 miles the next day. So I kind of mostly stuck to 7 hours. And I was prepared now and again to sleep less than that if I had to push on a little bit further, or I don't think I slept more than that much. Maybe I had a few 8-hour nights. But yeah, seven for me was the number. And then only maybe, I think it was 2 times, maybe 3, did I get a little bit sleep deprived. So could I have brought that 7 hours down to 6 hours and 30 minutes, maybe. And 30 minutes a day over 45 days is a day. So
Hmm.
almost. So, where's the room for improvement there? But it's hard to, I guess, unless you incrementally bring it down by 15 minutes or something each night and say, okay, let's go back up. I don't feel great. But the problem is when you start stepping into sleep deprivation, you slow down physically. So you lose so much time if you're tired, your pace goes slower. And if you're losing a minute a mile, or even let's say you're losing like 45 seconds a mile, and you're doing a 50-mile day. I don't know what's the math. Is that 45 minutes? I don't know. It's
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
minute
some like
a
40
day.
minutes or something. Yeah, let's call it that.
Yeah. So yeah. So it's you lose a lot. So
When
for me
you,
it was
s-
7 hours.
yeah, no, that's actually more sleep than I guess I expected you to say, which is really interesting. Obviously, you're putting so much strain on your body that that's still not a lot of sleep, not a lot of recovery time. When you say 7 hours, how long would you be stopped for the night per se between the wind down, getting into your crew, probably eating or something, and then getting to bed, and then getting up in the morning? How long do you think you were actually stopped at those stations? Is that 7 hours, or were you like dead asleep for 7 hours?
Yeah, so this is where I'm always stripping down what I do and looking at where I can improve.
Hmm.
So my goal was to be in bed within 30 minutes of pressing stop on my GPS watch
Hmm.
and lying down with my eyes shut. My device is charging. That was the goal. I achieved that goal a number of times, but m- more times than not, I had 45 minutes between stopping and going to bed. And then also a good too many times I had a full hour. And I found this out about myself is that because I didn't really have paces, I think I ran about 2,000 miles by myself and had 200 miles worth of just random people run with me, except for one guy who I'd arranged to run with me. So these were people I didn't know. I just met on the trail. So when I came in at the end of the day, I'd been by myself so much and I'd had no one to talk to.
Yeah.
30 wasn't enough because I enjoyed those interactions with my crew, Iceman and gun section. It was part of what made it a team event. And for me, it was what I enjoyed about the whole idea of a supported attempt. So I struggled to get it down to 30. I think a way to improve on that is actually have some pacers come along out to see me, spend more time with people on the trail, and then not feel that need to actually spend that time in the evening with the crew. Yeah.
Yeah. Or even if depending on who's with your crew, right? If they could meet you 4 miles from the car, you kind of get an hour to run with them and decompress on the day, right?
Iceman,
Um,
Iceman is 73 years old, or 72, and my mom gun section is 67. So yeah,
tough.
those guys and when they get there, they're preparing things. So I actually wouldn't need a pacer to ride
Yeah.
up with shotgun with those guys.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Gotcha.
so,
No, that's super interesting. I mean, you've touched on the weather being a really challenging aspect of this one, but maybe um, walk me through kind of your typical day and what that was like. You said it was on. You averaged about 50 miles a day, right? So
it was
how would
like,
you break that up? How much are you eating? Like frequency of eating, those kinds of things.
yeah, almost 50. I think it was like 48.8 or 48.9. So almost 49 miles a day.
Wow.
Rounded up 50. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, I'd set my alarm for 4 a.m. and when your alarm goes off in the morning and you've been running and your body's tired and the bed's nice. I had a roof tent on top of the Toyota Tacoma and not sponsored by any roof tent company or anything, just bought it out my own money. I saw it as a good investment and it was really nice because you've got this spacious, you can put your arms out to sleep. It's made for two people. The mattress actually wasn't super soft, but um, I'd wake up in the morning and really the last thing I wanted to do was get up and
Yeah.
and just move. So I remember String Bean said when asked a question about every decision he made, he said, "Is this decision going to help me get the record, or is this going to hinder my progress in getting the record? So I knew, not just based off string bean, but I just knew that as soon as that alarm went off, I needed to go into action mode. So what I did was I made sure my running vest, my shoes, socks, hiking poles, or food, water, everything I needed to start the trail, head torch, and just go was in the tent with me. So I actually got fully prepared in the tent, got out of the tent, and I was ready to go. I started eventually having my cold black coffee heated up by Iceman, and then I'd set off and go. And because I was delayed by almost 3 months, 2.5 months, my daylight hours shifted. So I wanted to start on the 20th of, sorry, on the 1st of June. So I would have 40 days, 41 days of the most amount of daylight hours
Yeah.
possible in a given calendar year. And my whole start date was shifted to August the 2nd, I think it was. So quite some time. Oh, 2 months. Okay, so 2 months shifted by 2 months. And that also shifted the sunrise and
Yeah.
it shifted the sunset. And it just made me have less daylight hours.
Yeah.
So the first part of my day, I'd run in darkness for around 2.5 hours with my head torch. And I saw it as a milestone, an achievement. When I was able to take my head torch off and put it in my pack, I was like, okay, I'm through the night running now. And then I'd see my crew, and typically I would have done a longer section in the morning. So then I'd have something a little bit more heavy to eat, maybe a bacon and egg, half a sandwich. And throughout the whole day, I had 150 calories per 30 minutes, and it was natural foods. So no gels.
So
And
about 300 calories per hour while you're moving. Is that correct?
three, yeah, 300 for 15 to 16 hours a day.
Wow. So
Yeah.
I'm going to do some math here. What is that a day?
I think 4,500. And then you've got to add my evening meal and my breakfast onto that, which was about 1,000.
So
Yeah.
you're
So
probably
I was
eating
about,
7,000 calories a day or getting close to that.
6.5, 7. Yeah. Something
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I didn't lose like excesses of weight. So I seemed to, and I didn't run out of energy either. So I felt for me that was I got told by my crew later on, they actually upped it to, what was it, 200 calories every 30 minutes because they thought I was getting a bit skinny, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, you're
yeah,
still you're still miles away from like when I asked Josh Perry not to bring him up too much, but he was eating like 12,000 calories a day. So, that's pretty remarkable that you could eat that much and not be losing significant weight in my mind because
yeah.
personally if I was to be doing that many miles, I feel like I'd have to eat more than that.
Well,
So that's
if I looked at my Strava, it tells you how many calories you burn for the run, and it was always about 45, 4,600. So obviously that's my moving time, and then you've got to take into account outside of that, which is about 100 or so calories an hour just being sedentary. So that's like 5,500 calories.
mm,
I think, well, I mean, listen, if Josh Perry did that and didn't put weight on, he was eating the right amount of food and it made him feel good. It was working.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think that just shows how efficient you must be, like your body, your build, your things like that. And I think for me I have to consume more cuz I'm nearly a 200-pound guy, right? So I'm sure that just I'm not efficient, right? I'm not a marathon guy who's just lean and just extremely, efficient on the trail. I'm sure like I need to improve my weight to output ratios, I guess.
That's what your goals are, man. You know? Yeah, yeah.
So that's pretty incredible. How like what you said that it was like all solid foods. So the calories that you're eating while running, what's some of the stuff that you gravitated towards for that? Because I mean, I guess in my mind, you'd be drinking a lot of calories or things like that. But
Last year, I kind of copied from Carol in 2018 and in my failed attempts as well, 19 and 21, and even the Southwest Coast Path. Carol drank a lot of soda, caffeine-free soda, like Sprite, and things like this. And, I saw that there was a lot of calories going into his body just by having a sugary drink, which is easy. But I've never drank those things. And when I
Mm.
did my attempts and I kind of copied this year, I said to myself, actually, you know what? I want to make this my own. I want to put my signature on this attempt. I don't really want to copy because now I'm the second fastest in the world from last year, 2022. I have some experience. I've got good credentials, so let's add in some things that I love to eat in my daily diet. And one of the things I discovered in America was these things called Wyman's wild blueberries.
Mm.
And the wild blueberries have like two times, unless it's marketing, two times the amount of antioxidants than like regular berries. So I would make my crew. I mean, even in my daily life, I was having two portions a day, which was about 600 grams or something. And then when I was on trail, I wanted to up that to three. So I was having a pound of blueberries a day. Um,
Wow.
and so, yeah, I went away from the fizzy drinks and went to more towards things that I think could help heal my body. Uh, yeah, a lot more natural food.
So more than just fruit, you wanted the antioxidant effects.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much calories in it. I mean, there's no calories in it really, but I enjoyed it in my daily life. I still do. Tomorrow I'll have a mixture of currants, blueberries, and blackberries and stuff. And it's just
Hmm.
my go-to. It makes me feel good. So I wanted to bring that to the trail. And my crew were awesome. They had some cool boxes, always had my blueberry drinks. That was cool. And then regular stuff. Most of the time, I didn't have McDonald's because they had a griddle and they could do bacon and egg themselves. There's no need to drive to McDonald's. So I had a bacon and egg sandwich, which probably had a bit more calories on. Stayed away from dairy. I kind of had virgin coconut oil instead of my sandwiches. Um, and in the mornings, I had some bagels, like coconut butter on there. Not that I'm plant-based at all. I like that stuff. Yeah, then regular food. Sometimes I had Snickers bars. A lot of the time I'm having sandwiches, and these sandwiches consist of avocado and some organic steak or chicken, when could be organic. So I was having chicken and steak every day. Uh, yeah, so and then some kind of like some bars, some dry bars, some more meaty bars. Tried to keep the protein kind of pretty high. Um, M&Ms, trail mix, Cheerios, Chips Ahoy, Cheetos, like through hiker food as well.
Yeah.
And just I was always consistent with it. I was so impressed to I lost some of the skin off my tongue towards the end because I was eating so constantly, and I think the acidity from the blueberry drinks, and it would sting for the last say week or 10 days, my tongue would sting when I ate food, and then like eventually it would go away, I kind of lost a little bit of the skin off my tongue, which was pretty rough.
Wow.
And that's only eating six and a half, 7,000 calories. So I don't know what Josh and those dudes happened to their tongues.
Yeah, I can't imagine that either. That would be. I mean, I get that sometimes, even at the end of, um, like my own ultras, because I have to drink so much salt. I'm a very salty sweater, and it starts to have effects.
Yeah.
So how did you come across, or like how did you develop this nutrition plan for yourself? Is that something that you developed from previous years of attempts, or is that something that you've proven on your own time outside of these attempts? Because the interesting thing about what you're doing here is you can't just always go duplicate these things, right? It's like even guys that are running, let's say ultras, 200-mile distances, it's very hard to go and just on a training run, go without sleep and see how you do, or go and try to eat for 2 days straight this kind of run food, or so I mean, I'm curious how you develop that. I mean, I know you're a coach. I know that you probably spend a lot of time looking at aspects like this. But yeah, I'm just curious if it was the previous experience or if this is stuff you're spending the year figuring out in training.
So I've been running hundreds for almost a decade, and I think that's when you start having to think about calories per hour for me personally. And I found it was about 250 to 350 calories. 300 or around that number was the sweet spot. And if I felt I was eating too much, I backed off a little bit. If I felt I needed to eat more, I would eat a little bit more. So that was just my experience over the past 10 years. of what works for me personally. But also, I listen to a lot of um, podcasts and listen to other ultra runners, and I read about the science. And it seems that, yeah, I mean, I know you had Michael McKnight on your show, and he ran 100 miles without eating any calories, but that's not, that was just a certain project unique from everything else, you know? So that was amazing. But like in day to day 100 milers, I'd say most people seem to be hitting about 300 calories. And when you
Mhm.
look at your GPS watch or your Strava or whatever it is, if you, I'm burning about that many calories an hour when I'm running. So
Yeah.
depending on the intensity, but zone two kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm saying though is like, if you're to go run an 100 miler, you're pretty much going to drink half of your calories, right? And just those carby liquid drinks for a lot of people, right? They're just so easy. They go down so easy. And then you're eating, so you only have to figure out like half of the rest of your diet, and, you're figuring out what's going to work with your gut. But that's still only 100 miles. When you're doing 2,200, you've got to figure out solid foods that continue to agree with you, right? A lot more solid foods.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is tough. It's trial and error. And,
Mm-hmm.
I got 6 days into it. I mean, I had 15 days with Carol. I drew experience from 15 days with Carol. I had 6 days myself in 2019. 2020, I had 10 days. 2021, 6 days. 22 last year, like 44 days. So I'm really honing in. So it's not really the 100. I used the 100 miles and applied it, but I definitely learned things. And I mean,
Yeah.
when you start this kind of stuff, you're right. You do not have the answers. And you have to find them out along the way. And you have to go into it with that. Also, that's one of the mindsets I went in with that. I don't know what it takes to set the record because I'm about to try to do something I've never done. I'm
Yeah.
going to reach around to people who have done what I want to achieve, which was, Carol and Speed Goat. But along the way, I'm going to have to improvise, pivot, and find my own way. So, yeah, being open to learning as you go and not looking for a template to apply to yourself is definitely the right approach. It was for
Yeah.
me.
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. Knowing that you're going to have to make adaptations and being prepared, it's kind of like building those buffers in per se mentally. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I just mentioned this, but like you're obviously you do coaching on the side, or I guess I say on the side of your running career, but I guess that's like your career, as well as is this coaching. How much of your coaching is like what percentage of coaching is just diet?
So I had a guy, I won't mention his name, but he probably know who he is if he listens to this. And he said his legs started to feel weak, usually around 30 miles when he's doing a run. And I was asking him questions, and eventually I said, "Well, how many calories an hour are you doing?" He said 50. So, okay, we found it. We've solved, we've solved to him. It was, it wasn't obvious. But for
Yeah.
me, with the years of experience that I have, super obvious, man. Like there's gonna come a point when in around 30 miles, your body's just eating fat for energy because you're not putting enough in. So yeah, there are a lot of questions about nutrition. It's balanced also to do with equipment because I've obviously used a lot of hiking poles and um,
Mhm.
running packs and like stopping chafing and these kind of things as well. And then obviously strategy, like don't, people ask, well, where should I place myself in the pack? And then the other thing is, like asking someone the question, when you fall off your um, personal goal, are you going to quit or what's going to keep you going? Because we don't
Mhm.
always stay on. So then philosophy and mindset talk. So it's a combination, but yeah, people love to talk about food. Big part of it.
Yeah. No, I think that's super interesting. So I want to hear what your hardest day on trail was during this FKT attempt. Walk me through what was going on. What do you feel like was one of the most challenging things that you encountered out there?
Yeah. I mean, I guess there were many, but I'll just pick one. Um,
Yeah.
when I was in Vermont and I'd got through the toughest section, which has a milestone of Musalaki, a really tough climb, and I went up it so peaceful. I just used my breathing to bring myself into almost like a relaxed yoga mindset and just allowed myself to be present with every single footstep all the way up that mountain. I was present for every footstep, not 3 or 4 steps ahead. I was right where I was at that point. And I felt I just felt great. On the other side, I came down and I thought, I'm through the hard part, like now. And then I hit Vermont and it was just so wet and an area, because I've run, the trail a lot. And I was in an area where it was just bone dry last year, and they call Vermont for mud. And I was just going through mud, and eventually, I was just, I was so broken, like mentally, my heart was broken. I just thought to myself, I can't do this. Like the overall record, forget about it. It's just it's not going to happen. And then I saw these two people, and one of the guys pulled out his camera, two hikers, saw a lot of hikers. And I said, please don't film me. I'm going through a bad time. I feel really bad. And I started crying and I just said, I can't do this. And he put his arms around me, and the woman who was there started crying because it was a really powerful moment. And he said, don't allow yourself to believe that you're a failure. And and he said the right thing at the right time, because what I felt at that point was a failure. So I was upset, but that kindness lifted me really high. And it was just one of the things that carried me forwards on that trail. So people's kindness can take you a long way. It really can. I had loads of tough days. That was just
Yeah.
a small part of a tough day.
Yeah. No, it's really a beautiful experience out there on the trail. The trail provides, I guess. Yeah, that's a really, really cool story
But
there. I mean,
I had the tough conditions, 100-mile-an-hour winds over Mount Washington. And I knew Andrew Thompson, we'd been talking over the years, and he got stopped on Mount Washington with rime ice, strong winds. So I knew that when I go up Mount Washington, just in case there's some kind of hurricane or something, I'm going to have a pair of long trousers, a pair of waterproof trousers, a warm top, and I had all that stuff with me. And it was 100-mile-an-hour winds, and I almost got hypothermic wearing all that stuff and a hat I bought from the Washington Center and gloves. So I felt really awesome that I'd anticipated what might happen and what did happen. And that was tough, because when I left that Washington weather center at the top, I was really, for me, it was rolling a dice. It's either I stay here and end the attempt, or I go outside and maybe I'm going to put myself at risk. And I was scared. And I went out and I started to feel, I don't think I'm at risk. Yeah, they're tough conditions, but I feel I can do this. And then my confidence grew. And then eventually I got down to, I forget the name of the hut, but the blue sky was out, the birds were chirping. I took off all these clothes, wet clothes, kilograms and kilograms, pounds and pounds of wet clothes, put them in my pack, just with my shorts and t-shirt, phoned up my friend Veronica and said, hey, you'll never guess what I just came through. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Preparation, right? I mean, it's just so key. And I do want to take a couple of quick hits on some gear items at some point, but maybe walk me through the best day out there. What was that like?
Yeah. So I think time with people, I got to really touch, it was a supported attempt. And those times, like gun section is my mother, I just lost my father yesterday. So, to be able to spend time, that kind of create memories. I knew every time I saw the crew, I was creating a memory that in the future I can draw upon. So to be able to be in the present moment of creating beautiful memories for myself with my family, an Iceman who is as good as family as well, a best friend, even at 72, doesn't matter, was probably the most special part of the trail. So yeah, building rich lifetime memories with family and friends. And
Yeah, sounds like
that was my first and second gratitude points. My mother, or gun section, and Iceman.
yeah. It sounds like you were really running in a good frame of mind for so much of this. Do you feel like you get into like a state of mind that's almost meditative. I mean, you're out there solo for so long. Do you kind of get into this flow state or meditative mindset often? Is that something that happens every day? Is that something that comes every once in a while for you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they describe athletes can enter the like basketballers and run as high the zone and these things. I mean, I definitely, I got to explore the inside of my mind in a special way. Like a lot of the time, I spend too much time looking at my phone, or I look too much at my laptop, and I'm distracted, and I'm not really drawing on I'm not really going too much into my mind and drawing on, like I said, these special memories I've created throughout my life. So having the opportunity to be stripped, no billboards, no advertising around me. I'm not in New York City, no sound around me, just the birds and the wind, and just to be able to kind of take away all distraction, and then sometimes get to the point where you've got nothing else to do than just, okay, well, hey, I'm tired of looking at the trees and the trail, and you just entertain a memory and you go into it and you explore it. And I explored some pretty special memories. In one particular time, it was at my nan's house, my grandmother. She's passed away now, but I was able to go into her house, and I was able to just explore the house and the smell and the touch of things, and the visual aspects of the wallpaper, the carpet, these kind of things, which I wouldn't have had time for. So for me, I think I mean, it wasn't really a flow because, oh, but having said that, while I was doing this, I was running some gradual incline. And if I was thinking about the gradual incline, it would have killed me because you're on, I don't know, like 8 to 12% or something. Your pack is, I don't know, whatever it is. And you're running uphill and you're tired. That was close to the end. And I'm able to just really not think about what I'm doing, not be distracted by any outside things, but go into my head and then just be chilling up this trail at a pretty decent pace. So I guess you could call that the flow, or my
Mm-hmm.
version of it.
Yeah. No, I preach that a lot. Just the idea of getting out there and getting out there, long enough, or maybe helping yourself get into that disconnected state, right? Whether it's the cell phones we carry around in our pockets all the time and the amount of, whatever it is, advertisements or just constant flow of information, whether it's driving down the road and seeing the billboards, whatever it is, like there's just constant bombardment of things. And so I think getting out there and having that opportunity to reflect and disconnect is so critical. And I need to create more of that on like a daily basis in my life, like I think the easiest one would be obviously like to get out and exercise every day, but two would be to, kind of create that, I don't know, hour before you go to bed of full disconnect. But I think nature, it has just such a powerful ability to help us, to force us, to put us into that scenario of disconnecting and kind of getting into a reflective or meditative or flow state. So, yeah, I would imagine 40, 44, 45 days out there that you'd have some opportunity.
We can learn a lot from the indigenous and native people of the countries. I lived in Australia for a long time, and there's a Aboriginal big, they're the original people of Australia, and just and the indigenous people of America. And I just think that I liked what this guy said to me once. He said that in the West, or we believe we own the land, and the indigenous people believe they're part of the land. And I think if you anyway, that's just one thing. But yeah, I think we could learn a lot from just being with nature more, as we should do. We really should. We should do that. I should do it more. All of us.
Right. Um, Real quick, gear. Let's talk just a couple quick hits on gear. What were some of the most pivotal pieces of gear that you took on the trail?
Yeah. Yeah, over the time I've now got it fine-tuned for what works for me. So Hoka product supported me, t-shirts, shoes, and shorts. And I used my socks from Darn Tough, which I like them. They've got really cool designs on them, and that works for me, the thin ones, the ultra thin ones. So first of all, what I was wearing was really important. And when it was wet, I switched out my shorts for bicycle style, tight fitting, like
Yeah.
not
Chafing.
necessarily like a material, but tight fitting shorts. So there was no loose material. And that really worked well. Like I had dry clothes, wet clothes. And then, yeah, like I said, I didn't get paid anything by Hokum. They gave me some shoes, and I love the shoe since Carol was wearing them in 2018. I did a bit of trail running in other brands, Um, but for me, the Hoka with the cushioning, eventually what happens is when you're on the AT, not only does it have almost 500,000 of elevation gain and loss, it's also got a lot of rocks. It's not a groomed trail. It's really rocky and there's some really knobbly routes, but to look after your feet, you got to have some cushioning. I don't think I'd want to try to do that in a minimalist shoe. So I
Right.
always went to my Mafades. They were awesome, or the Speed Goats, or anything with some good cushioning. And then actually, I had like a massage gun, and I held it sideways so it wasn't pounding on my foot, and it was like vibrating, and I used it to just vibrate massage my feet, both sides, the arch, the ball of the foot. And last year, I would lie in the roof tent on the nighttime, and one of the things that would hurt the most of my feet would just have so much pain. And I do a lot of my training and run coaching in Thailand. So I go and have it's called a foot reflexology, and it's cheap. It's like $6, and they poke sticks into your feet for an hour, and it feels so good and so painful, but it's great. Not into your skin, just
Yeah.
pressure.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I used the massage gun this year to kind of stimulate the fascia all around my feet, and I didn't have that pain in my feet.
Hmm.
So, my clothes, my shoes, my massage gun was awesome. The roof tent, I loved the roof tent. That was sick. Loved that. Um, yeah, and then my poles, I had some super lightweight poles which were great, and
Do you run
um,
with those out all the time, or are you taking them out and in all the time?
no, I had a quiver on
Okay.
my pack, and I break them down so quick. I've got gloves, quick release, it's the lucky ones, stuff
Hmm.
them in my pack, the quiver, excuse me, and just carry on running hands free. And then when I need them, pull them out again. And generally, it depends. If my quads, as you said, there's a lot of elevation change. If I wanted to look after my quads, I use them going downhill. If I wanted to just get into a bit of a rhythm and the trail was kind of nice and wide, I'd use them going uphill. So, and then my watch, I love my watches. The Enduro 2. I had one of my run coaching clients gift it to me. It's like, hey, Kristian, I know you don't have a sponsor for the watch. Go ahead, go and buy one and use it on the trail. So yeah, that was really nice. And the battery on those things lasts forever. The accuracy is perfect. It's yeah. So that's like my screen with all my information and stuff. But I didn't look at the distance. I just
Yeah.
didn't want to see that. You know.
Would you load your maps onto your watch every day, or like what?
So I had my phone and I loved Gut Hook. I actually now they call it Far Out Guide.
Yeah. Okay.
So I love the what I did a lot of the stuff that the through hikers had, and I didn't mention this, but I camped out a lot on the trail. And I took a like through hiking backpack, put in, my super light tent in there. Z packs is awesome. I had my air mat. I had a sleeping bag, and then I had a McDonald's quarter pounder with some cheese and some nuggets and a cold coffee for in the morning. And I just went out on the trail. If it was the too short to stop at say 48 miles and I had to do 6 miles in to make it like, I don't know, 54 or something, I just go into the trail and then meet the guys on the other side because it was too far to go all the way through. So I did a lot of through hike style camping out by myself as well.
That's interesting that you were so focused and kind of fixated on hitting a certain number of miles every day that you'd take that approach. That's I didn't realize that you were that's really interesting, right? Because most supported guys, it's like if I can't, they're only ever going to stop at a crewable aid station type of stop, right? So that's really interesting, and maybe there's some magic in that. But I better wrap this up though. I really appreciate
I'd say so,
the
yeah.
time, the all the advice, the experiences. Obviously, you live a very, very interesting life. Living in Thailand, visiting Ethiopia, I do hope one day you do write that book that you've alluded to here. I'm sure there's a lifetime full of very, very interesting memories and knowledge to share. Congratulations setting the FKT. I hope you're still, just sitting up on your high horse and feeling the accomplishment that was. Absolutely, absolutely incredible. And I did want to give you just a chance to talk about your coaching service, what you do there, and how people can get in contact with you. Would love to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. I do online coaching, and that kind of supports my running hobby. I wouldn't say that I'm a professional runner. I don't get paid by anyone. So it works nicely that I'm able to balance my time with my coaching clients, work with them. And then I'm able to go to places like Thailand and get into the mountains. So yeah, if anyone's interested in, helping me support my long trail addiction, and wants to maybe find out about how they can complete their first 100-miler or do their first ultra, or want to learn about the Ethiopian secrets or what it's like to do a long trail like 2,000 miles long, give me a shout. I'm genuinely experienced. I walk the walk, and I got the knowledge. So yeah, I'd also like to say as well, at the moment, I'm playing with the idea of going back next year to go northbound for the overall record. And if I got that, I'd be the only person in the world to have the south and the northbound record. So kind of watch this space, watch my Instagram or whatever, which is Kristian Ultra, I think, yeah, with a K. You can put that in the show notes. But yeah, watch, because I don't feel I've reached my potential yet, and I feel there's still a little bit more to go. So let's see. Yeah,
that'd be absolutely incredible to be able to go back and do that. That's a lot of drive. That's a big commitment. So if you end up back there, I'll be cheering you on. I was looking at your Instagram and stuff this morning. If you guys enjoy some spontaneous dancing too, you'll see a little bit of that. You look like you're just having so much fun out there all the time. It's awesome. Yeah, if you make it back out there, best of luck. I hope you do, crush that. And I think one of the things that's so attractive to me about just this whole sport, whether it be running, backpacking, hiking, is just the longevity in this, right? To see you getting better every year, versus other sports, people are like, they're starting to phase out at 30, and it's like, man, we're just starting at 30, which is so cool. So I hope you just continue to train, get better, and I'm sure there's going to be more amazing accomplishments to come from you, Kristian. So, okay. I really appreciate your time today. I know it was, found out it was a tough week for you. My condolences there. And again, tribute to your dad and the man that he created and the life that you're living. It's incredible. And I'm sure he's very, very proud of that. So thank you again for coming on the show.
Shout out to Dad. Thank you.
All right. I hope you guys really enjoyed that interview. Again, big thank you to Kristian for coming on the show. Really enjoyed hearing some of the behind the scenes action, I guess you can say, that went into this, and the amount of attention and detail and planning that went into an effort like this. I know that we often go backpacking to disconnect from the world and to de-stress, but having this kind of knowledge and learning from people like Kristian really allow you to go out there and accomplish goals, and to maybe your goal is to do a specific hike that just is going to require you to push a little harder, go a little farther. And it's conversations like this, knowledge like this, that really powers you to go and make those things happen. And sometimes just be stress-free when you even go on smaller hikes. I went on a hike just last week that was a little bit of a shorter hike, and it was just so relaxing. Whereas that hike, maybe a decade ago would have still been an effort, if that makes sense. So it's so fun to just see progress. I hope you guys are setting big goals like we talked about in this podcast and continuing to learn. Okay. If you guys have not yet, please subscribe to the podcast. Please rate and review the podcast. That really helps us continue to grow our presence and to continue to put these on. Share it if you would. All of those things really help us. But with that, we'll see you guys out on the trail and in the next podcast.